Okay, Be'ezus Hashem. Today's daf is daf Mem Dalet, and we're going to begin Mem Gimel Lamed Beis, 3 lines from the bottom. It's a very straightforward daf. Today, the Gemara is continuing the discussion, a fascinating discussion with Rav, said in the name of Rav Chizda, Lo Yaleinu. I mean, this is a fantastic situation where a kohen whose father, let's say, we'll call him his father, got in a car accident, Lo Yaleinu. And nikta roishoy shel aviv, and his father's head got severed, cut. And so memele, in the coffin, you have the father's head with the rest of the body. Eina mitamala, he's not allowed to attend the funeral. He's not allowed to be, in the room with the mace. We know a kohen could be mitama to his father, but not if his father has some body parts missing. And even if he doesn't have his body parts missing, but if they're not in one piece, he's also not allowed to be mitama to his father.
Yeah.
Why? The only time he's allowed to be mitama his father is only when his father is bismanshi shalem, when his father is 100% intact. Loy bismanshu chaser, but not if his father is missing a part of his body or it's not fully put together. So,
what if he was born that way?
Oh, so these are questions that they ask Rabbi Feinstein in the Igros Moshe. And I saw that one of the questions that, let's say he had an operation to take out a kidney, right?
But so there's a difference between internal and external.
That's right. So that's what he points out. He says he's seen things to say that not everybody agrees with him, because Rabbi Nasha Klein always went to, he was a rabbi in Borough Park, and he wrote a Sefer Shona Halachos, but he disagreed. He said the Gemara seems to be across the board. It doesn't matter what you're missing. So this is that's a good point. But Rabbi Feinstein said if it's missing some internal organ, it's not, the kohen could attend the father's funeral. But this was an opinion of Rav. Rav said that if the father is missing something, is not 100% intact, his son cannot attend the levaya. So the Gemara is just going to ask one question on Rav and then answer it. Then we go to the new Mishnah. Gemara says, Vatanya, didn't we learn in a Brisa? Vatanya, we learned in a Brisa, Rav Kahana Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov, he said, law. The pasuk says, law, that a kohen is allowed to be metama, attend the funeral, and bury his sister. Law, to her. Her implies a body. The eina metama le'evarim. Let's say his sister lost a limb, and they're burying that, let's say, limb. Let's call it a foot. So then the brother cannot, bury that limb. He's not allowed to be metame. Prat lekazayis minames. It also excludes, let's say, a kazayis, a size of an olive from his sister, in the camps, right? So if it's his sister's olive, body part, he cannot bury it. The kazayis natzel, or a kazayis of fluid from the body, umloy tavid rakav, or just a spade full of dust from his, I don't know, maybe they burnt the body or something like that. So then the kohen, it cannot be metama to his sister if she's in such a situation. He has to be metama to the body of his sister. So I might think yochol, and this is where the question begins. Lo yatama, the kohen should not be allowed to be metama. L'shidra, let's say they only have the spine of the sister. V'lagugailis, or the skull of the sister. Ulroi binyana, or let's say they have most of the big bones of the body of the sister. That's the shank bones and one thigh, Rashi says, or l'roi binyana, or you get most of the bones, even though you can't put together a body. But if it's most of the little bones, there's some, there's tiny bones in your foot. If you add up all the bones, then it's, let's say you have 125 bones out of the 248. So then I might think that the brother cannot be metama. So the pasuk says, Ksiv, here's the pasuk. Emor v'amarta aleihem, it says twice Emor, that that says by Parshas Emor, which is talking to the dinim for a kohen. The Torah adds on another possibility for a kohen to be metama, which implies that even if his sister is not complete body, all you have is just the spine of your sister, you're allowed to be metama. and other situation, or you have the skull of your sister, you're allowed to be mitama. Bango. According to Rav, you said that if you're missing a body part, if it's not a complete body part, you're not allowed to be mitama. But this is question. We go to Memdalet Amar Aleph. And the Brisa even continues. I might think that for your father, you just told me for the sister, yes. But what about for the father and the other, his mother? Let's say you only have the spine of the mother, or the spine of the father, or the skull. I might think that the son cannot be mitama. Or Marta, we could say it's like the sister. You said the sister, it's okay. Then if it's his mother or father, it's also okay, because we darshan ma achoisim yuchedes. Just like the sister is special for the kohen. The kohen could be mitama for his sister, and the Torah says shagufa toluboy, that whatever the body hangs on to, the main parts of the body, there's a dispensation for the kohen to be mitama. Umatama, for example, the shidra that the kohen could be mitama for the spine and the skull and all that for the sister. If you have the other 6 kroivim, I think it's the brother, the mother, the father, right, and his wife, all the other relatives that the kohen could be mitama ba. As soon as you have any part of the body, you could be mitama to it. Even if you don't have the whole body, if you just have the skull or the spine, you could be mitama. So right here ends the question. How could Rav say that a kohen cannot be mitama to his father unless he's fully intact? And here the Brisa says beferish explicitly that the kohen is allowed to be mitama. So the Gemara, Ahi Name Rabbi Yehuda, that is the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. And Rabbi Yehuda is very lenient, and he says that the kohen could be mitama. The Rav, the Omar, Rav Paskin, Kehai Tana, like the following Tana. The Tanya we learned in a Brisa. And this is the Tana, this is the Rabbanan. And the Rabbanan hold, not like this Brisa. Rabbanan hold that the only time a kohen could be mitama to any of the relatives is only if you have 100% of that relative in that box. But other than that, you can't. And then the Gemara says, Masa, there was a story. Shemeis Aviv Sherabi Yitzchak bin Ginzak. The father of Rabbi Yitzchak, who was a kohen. So this Rabbi Yitzchak is a kohen, and his father passed away in Ginzak. Now, and they told Rabbi Yitzchak, your father passed away 3 years ago in this place called Ginzak. Let's say somewhere in Armenia. Okay? So now he's a kohen. What he wanted to do is reinter his father, dig him up and bring him to where the family is buried somewhere else. So that is permitted to be done, but he's a kohen. Can he do it? And they asked the Rabbi Yeshua and the 4 Zakanim, and they said, no, you can't do it. By now, some of the body decomposed. And we have a pasuk, L'Ovid, Bisman Shuhu Shalein. You could only, kohen could only be mitama to his father unless you have 100% of the body there, put together. But not if you're missing any part of the body. And since your father, Rabbi Yitzchak, died 3 years ago, probably his body decomposed. And therefore, they did not allow him to reinter the body somewhere else. Okay. The Mishnah continues, but basically, generally, we're not allowed to dig up bodies. But in those times, the only time that you're allowed to do it is if you can bring him to where other Jews or where his relatives are buried. In fact, the Chida died in Italy, and they brought his body back not too long ago in the 60s, I think, to Israel, 200 years after he passed away, and they buried him in Israel. Although I don't think the people who did that lived much longer after they accomplished that feat. Anyway, new Mishnah. Shloisha minim asurim benazar. There are 3 things asur with a nazir, right? There are 3 things that are asur with a nazir. 3 halachas. Hatoma, he's not allowed to touch a dead body. Batiglachas, he's not allowed to shave his head. Vayotzim in a gap, and he's not allowed to drink wine. So now the Mishnah teaches you that the halachas of each. Koime betuma v'tiklachas is stricter, the halachas of tuma and taking a haircut, from drinking wine. Why? Because if a Nazir shatuma v'teglachas, if the Nazir violates tuma, he touched the dead body, or he took a haircut, soisrin, then it restarts the count. So if he touched the dead body, so let's assume that he made a naziris for 100 days, and then he touched the dead body. So then, even if it was day 99, too bad. You have to restart the count and recount 100 days. And even if you took a haircut, now the truth is, when you take a haircut, it's a little different. You have to restart the count for 30 days. In other words, you take a if he took a haircut, then he has to wait an extra 30 days. He doesn't have to recount 100 days, but in order for him to complete his naziris, he has to have some full set of hair that he's going to cut off. And you don't get a full set of hair unless you go 30 days without a haircut. So for teglachas and for tuma, it resets the count, albeit for tuma, it resets from the clock from the beginning. And for teglachas means you have an extra 30 days. But if a Nazir violates and drinks something from wine, let's say, he doesn't have to recount, he just did an avera. There's a more stringency by drinking wines than the halachas by tuma and teglachas by taking a haircut. There's something more stricter about drinking wine. Drinking of wine for a nazir, there's never a leniency for a nazir to drink wine at all, even if he made. We're not talking about kiddush wine because that may be drabanan, but let's say he made a shvua. He swore, "I'm going to drink wine," and then he became a nazir. He cannot drink the wine at all. There's no exceptions. There's no exceptions. The tuma v'teglachas, but regarding tuma and teglachas, hutru meklalim. There is an exception for a nazir to be matama himself, and a nazir to take a haircut. V'teglachas mitzvah, but taking a haircut sometimes is a mitzvah for a nazir to take. Let's say the nazir became a mitzvah. Well, part of the mitzvah process is to take a haircut. So if the nazir was a mitzvah, he is required to take a haircut, despite being a nazir. Uva meis mitzvah, and also. If he finds that Nazir walks on the street and sees a dead body and nobody's burying it, and there's nobody to call, the Nazir has to be busy burying that dead body. So that's an exception that occurs by tuma and teglachas. That's there's something more stricter by tuma and teglachas, that the tuma has more of a restrictive than haircut. Okay, Tuma is more stricter than haircuts. Why? Tuma suseres as a call. Tuma resets the clock from everything. Not only that, v'chayovim allow carbon. When a nazir becomes tameh, not only does he restart the clock, but he has to bring extra carbonas before he starts counting to be a nazir again. The teglachas, but if he took a haircut, ein suseres al shloshim. He only has to count 30 more days, but ein chayovim allow carbon. So he doesn't have to bring a carbon. So there are some leniencies and strictness and strictness and stringencies by each of the halachas of the three halachas. Again, the glachas, tuma, and not drinking wine. So the Gemara wants to, find the sources and wants to say, perhaps you shouldn't say what the halachas are. So the Gemara says like this: the tuma le'tuta meklala. There should be no exceptions by tuma. We said by tuma that a kohen, a nazir that finds a meis mitzvah, he could bury that dead body. We should say not so. We should say a tuma, he's not allowed to be matama himself under any circumstance. And I will say like this: kal v'choymer miyayin. I'll make a kal v'choymer from wine. Or ma yayin, just like wine, which is more lenient than tuma. She'ein soiser, it doesn't restart the clock. Lahuta meklali. So by wine, there are no exceptions. So why don't we say the same thing by tuma? Sheseseres, tuma, which is more stricter, because tuma restarts the clock. Certainly, there should be no exceptions. So how do you know that if there's a dead body and nobody can bury it, that the nazir is permitted to bury the dead body? Talmud Bavli, because the pasuk says la'aviv le'imay lo yatama. Torah says that a nazir cannot touch a dead body, not even to his father and his mother. So you think that that's coming to teach you something more stricter. No, it's teaching you a leniency. It's only la'aviv li'imay lo yitama. He's not allowed to be mitama for his father and mother. But a nazir is permitted to be mitama himself if there's a mace mitzvah. Now the Gemara asks another question. V'yayin yutam recall. Gemara goes in reverse. Let us say that there should be an exception by wine. That if there's a mitzvah to drink wine because the nazir has to keep a shavua, let him be permitted to do so. And I'll make a kal v'choyim mituma. Ma tuma. Tuma is more stricter than wine, right? She says that it could, you have to restart the clock if you matama yourself. And despite being more stricter, hutra makloli, there are exceptions for tuma because the nazir could be matama himself for a mate's mitzvah. Yayin she'enasoisa, but wine, which is not, it doesn't restart the clock, so it's much lighter than tuma. That there should be exceptions by wine, and if you have a mitzvah to drink wine, your mitzvah should override your naziris. So how do you know that? Because the pasuk says it's an extra pasuk. The pasuk says you're not allowed to drink anything that comes from a vine tree, and then the pasuk singles out v'yayin v'sheicha yazer. He has to be separate from wine and beer and old wine. So why does the Torah single out wine? That the aser, even if there's a mitzvah to drink the wine, just like permissible wine he shouldn't drink, he's not allowed to drink. So also even mitzvah wine, the nazir is prohibited from drinking. There are no exceptions. Now the Gemara says, "V'yayin yister as hakol mikal v'choyim mituma." Then yayin should restart the clock, and you'll make a kal v'choyim from tuma. And in fact, we should say that if a nazir drinks wine, he should have to restart his naziris because you'll make a kal v'choyim from tuma. Ma tuma shutrum makloli is a call, just like tuma is hutrum makloli. There are exceptions, and it restarts the clock. Yayin shloi hutam makloli. So wine is more stricter. There are no exceptions by wine. Loi kolshkein sheyister. Certainly, the wine you should have to go back. If you drink wine, the nazir should have to restart the clock. How do you know? It's only by tuma you restart the clock and not by wine. Makra, because the pasuk says v'hayomim haYerushalayim yiplu. You have to restart the clock. He tamei nizroi because his naziris was tamei. Tuma seseres, only tuma restarts the clock and crumbles the original naziris. Ve'ina yayin soisa, and the wine, just drinking wine, does not demolish what you originally counted. So it's an extra pasuk. Now the Gemara says, "Ve'tiglachas tistes akol mekal v'choyma." Let us say that if he takes a haircut, it should demolish and he should restart the clock from number one. Why do we say it's only 30 days? And we'll say like this: Ma tuma. Tuma shloi also ba mitame kimitame soseres akol. Here's an interesting halacha that the one that's mitame the nazir, let's say somebody takes a dead body and brings it to the nazir and is mitame him. He doesn't get an avera, except if they iver, but he doesn't get a special avera. So tuma is like a lighter thing. But despite that, soseres is a call, it demolishes everything. You have to restart the clock. Teglachas, even not only is the nazir not allowed to take a haircut, but the barber who is giving him the haircut is also awesome. That we're going to learn a pasuk that says it clearly, explicitly, that the barber gets an avera. So teglachas is more stricter. Haircut by a nazir is much more stricter. That the barber himself gets an avera. Also, the guy that's giving the haircut is the guy who's giving the haircut gets an avera, just like the nazir himself that's getting the haircut. So if that's the case, ein adin just as a call that the nazir should restart the clock if he takes a haircut. Amakra again, same pasuk. Vayam Rishonim yiplu ki tamei nizroi. Tuma seseres akol vein teglachas seseres akol. Only tuma makes you restart the clock and not naziris. Not teglachas, not taking a haircut. Now the Gemara asks back another question. Maybe just like there's a pasuk that says that the barber that gives the haircut to the nazir gets an avera. Let us say that if somebody takes a kazayis of a mace and makes the nazir tummy, he should also get an avera. And I'll make a kal v'choyma from teglachas. He should get a special avera. The tuma nasaba kimitame kal v'choyma miteglachas. And I should say that the one that the guy that's mitame should get the same avera as the nazir that's becoming tamei, and I'll make a kal v'chomer from teglachas. By the case, ba'at teglachas, when Nazir gets a haircut, she'einish asaris el shloishim. A Nazir that gets a haircut, he only has to count 30 more days. Nevertheless, it has a strictness to it. She'also ba megaleach kimisgaleach. The guy that's giving the haircut has the same avera as the Nazir who is getting the haircut. So let's say the same thing. Tumah, she uses saris as a call. So tumah, which is more stricter, because tumah demolishes everything. You have to restart the count. Ein adin shenasabo mitame itame. That the one that's the Nazir that's getting tame, the one that's mitame the Nazir should have the same avera as the Nazir himself. Amakra, the pasuk says, "V'time roish nizroi, lematame roish nizroi." The only one that gets the nevera is the Nazir himself. The guy that makes him tame does not get avera. Now, so now the Gemara asks back, "V'teglachas loy nasaba k'magaleach k'misgalech." Let us say, by the case of teglachas, let us say that the Nazir doesn't get, the Nazir should not get, the Nazir, the guy that's giving the haircut should not get any avera. Why? Kal v'chomer mituma. I'll make a kal v'chomer from tuma. Well, who tells me that the barber gets an avera for giving a haircut to the Nazir? How do you know? Ma tuma shusha call tuma, which is the most strictest. It demolishes everything. Le'asaba mitame ki mitame. The one that's mitame than the Nazir doesn't get an avera like the Nazir himself. Teglachas she'einish aseres al shloishim. So teglachas, which does not demolish only 30 days. So certainly the barber should not be as get an avera like the Nazir himself. How do you know that the barber that gives the haircut to the Nazir gets an avera like the Nazir himself? Amakra, because as a pasuk says, Tar lo yava al roishoy. A Nazir is not allowed to get a razor blade over his head. Pri Bay, read it, lo ya'avar. You are now allowed to make it pass over his head. Not only he himself is not allowed to do it, he's not allowed to do it to somebody else. So we see clearly from that pasuk, the way the Gemara darshans, that the one that's giving the haircut to the Nazir is also not supposed to, is now gets an avera like the Nazir himself. Fascinating. So remember that. If a Nazir takes a haircut, he gets an avera. But who gets the equivalent avera as the Nazir? The barber that gives him the haircut. One more thing. Let us say by taking a haircut, there should be no exceptions. Why do we make an exception by a Mitzoira that he's allowed to take a haircut? Let us say a Kal V'chomer that there should be no exception. Miyayin, from wine. Ma yayin sheinish soisa. When you drink wine, you don't even have to restart the clock even for a day. You can continue on. There's no exceptions for another to drink wine. So that's lighter. Teglachas, taking a haircut, is much stricter. Sheseseres that demolishes that you have to count another 30 days. There should be no exceptions for another ever taking a haircut. Because the Torah says by a Mitzoira, Roishai, Vamarachana Zakane, cut your head, cut your beard. The Torah says by a Nazir, by a Mitzoira, you should cut off all your hair. And then the Torah says, cut your head, cut the hair on your head, cut your beard. Why does the Torah say extra words? To darshan that even if the Mitzoira is a Nazir, he should still take a haircut. So that's why there is an exception by Teglachas when the Nazir has a mitzvah to cut his hair when he's a Mitzoira. The Teglachas, two more questions. The Teglachas letista klal kal v'chomer miyayim. Let us say that you're now allowed that Teglachas should not even reset the clock at all, and we'll make a kal v'chomer from yayin. Wine, there is no exception by wine, and yet wine doesn't restart the clock. So by haircut, which there are exceptions, the Nazir is sometimes permitted to take a haircut. So then certainly it should not be restart the clock. He should right away continue on with his Naziris. Why does he have to wait an extra 30 days? And says the Gemara, it's just a technicality. It's not that he's recounting his Naziris, but in order to finish the Naziris, you have to have a full set of hair to take a haircut. That's a svara. You need to have hair on your head to make a haircut, when you're bringing the karbonis Naziris, when you finish your Naziris. So therefore, you have to let your hair grow another 30 days so that when you bring the karbonis, you can cut your hair and be mekayim the mitzvah of giluach. Then the final question of the Gemara, the yain yista shloishin yom. Let us say wine should at least give you a 30-day. If you drink wine, you have to count another 30 days. Kal v'chomer b'teglachas. Let us say kal v'chomer from teglachas. Uma teglachas, just like taking a haircut. Shutr mekloi. There are exceptions. So teglachas is a lighter avera than drinking wine. So seris, nevertheless, you have to wait 30 days. Yayin shleihuta mekloi, but wine, which there are no exceptions. You're never allowed to drink wine. So wine is more stricter than haircut. So certainly by wine, it should at least set you back by 30 days. Why does wine not set you back at all? And says the Gemara, no. The only reason why haircuts set you back is because you need to have a full set of hair to complete your Naziris. But if you drink wine in the middle of your Naziris, the Nazir still has a full set of hair, so he can complete his Naziris and bring his Karbonis. That's why when you drink wine, you don't have to restart the count again. Okay, we'll do a little bit on Amid Beis. The new Mishnah, Memdalit Amid Beis. Teglachas Tuma Ketzad. So Teglachas Tuma is what's the case of Teglachas Tuma? So I just want to bring up the Psukim over here. Hold on, we have the Psukim. Yeah. The Psukim say by a Nazir, when he becomes Tameh, he has to wait here. He has to bring Karbonis. So let's read the Pasuk inside. It says, all of a sudden he became Tameh. When his Nazir, he has to take a haircut on the 7th day. He has to obviously become Tar. In order to become Tar from a mace, you have to have the sprinkling of the paraduma on you on the 3rd and the 7th day. Then the Chumash says you take a haircut on the 7th day, and then you bring the karbonos on the 8th day. The reason why you bring the karbonos on the 8th day, l'chayra, you went to the mikvah on the 7th day. But in order to bring a korban, you have to have the sun set. And therefore, if you went to the mikvah and then you had Harav Shemesh, on the 8th day, you bring the karbonos. So now the Mishnah says, Teglachas Tumah Ketzad. What is the haircut for Nazir that became Tameh? So this is the procedure. When Nazir becomes Tameh, Hayamazeh b'shlishi b'shvi, they would sprinkle the paraduma waters on him on the 3rd and the 7th day. Then umagaleach b'shvi, then he would take a haircut on the 7th day. Umevi karbanaysa b'shmini, and would bring his karbanas on the 8th day. The in gileach b'shmini, but let's say he went to the mikvah on the 7th day, but he took his haircut on the 8th day. Maybe karbanasai by bayam divrei Rabbi Kiva. Rabbi Kiva holds he could bring his karbanos on that day. In other words, doesn't have to bring it on the 9th day, but if he took his haircut on the 8th day, already it's after the mikvah and after Harav Shemesh, after sunset. So if he took the haircut on the 8th day, bring the karbanos on that day. Amalei Rab Tafim, so Rab Tafim said to Rabbi Kiva, Ma bein zel mitzora. Why is the halacha of Nazir different than a mitzora? It seems that the Torah says a similar idea by a mitzora. When he's on his way to become tahar, the Torah says he waits outside his house for 7 days, right, before he can enter into his house, and he takes a haircut and then goes to the mikvah. And in there we say that if he took his haircut on the 8th day, then he has to bring his karbonos on the 9th day. What is the difference? Why by Mitzori, when he takes his haircut on the 8th day, he brings his karbonos on the 9th day, and by a Nazir, you say when he takes his haircut on the 8th day, he could bring his karbonos on the 8th day. Amalei, so Rabbi Kiva responded to Rabbi Tarfon, Zet harasei tluya b'yamav. By a Nazir, he already went to the mikvah. You go to the mikvah on the 7th day. If you go to the mikvah on the 7th day and you have sunset, really you're a tahar. You're not a tamei mace anymore, right? And therefore, you could technically take the haircut on the 8th day and bring your karbanos that day. Nothing is stopping you. But here's the key point. A mitzayra, in order to become tamei, he's not tamei from anything. He's not tamei. He already had his leprosy disappeared from him. So what is part of the purification process is first you have to take a haircut and then go to the mikvah. And because of that, if you go to the mikvah first and then take a haircut, it doesn't work. So the teglachas requires to precede the going to the mikvah. So if on the 8th day you took the haircut, then afterwards you're going to the mikvah. In order to bring your karbonos, you have to have sunset. So even if you had the haircut on the 8th day, you went to the mikvah on the 8th day, then you'll have sunset. You could only bring the karbanos on the 9th day. The Einim Eva carbon came hoyim or of Shemesh. You could only be the carbon after sunset of the next day. So the Gemara asks just one question: Kiblo mine oiloi. Did Rab Tarfon accept Rabbi Kiva's response? Rab Tarfon wanted to say that if a Nazir took his haircut on the 8th day, can only bring his carbon on the 9th day, like a Mitzorah. And Rabbi Kiva explained him the difference between a Mitzorah and a Nazir. So Tashma come in here with the Tani Hillel. Hillel says, and Hillel seems to agree with Rab Tarfon. Gileach Bashmini, if a Nazir took a haircut on the 8th day, what did Rab Tarfon say? Maybe karbanosai, but you bring the karbanos on the 9th day. So Hillel aligned himself with the opinion of Rab Tarfon. Rab Tarfon agreed with Hillel. So we see that they never accepted Rabbi Akiva's response, that there is a difference between Nazir and the Mitzorah. The Isal Kedaita Kibla Minei, if he accepted it, Leisi Karbanasa Bashmini, then why doesn't the Nazir bring his karbanos on the 8th day, like Rabbi Akiva says? Why did Hillel say you bring it on the 9th day? Rava said, Loi Kasha, that's not difficult. That Hillel could be aligned with Rabbi Akiva. Because when did Rabbi Akiva say that you could bring your karbanos the day that you took a haircut is only if you went to the mikvah on the 7th day. And therefore, if you went to the mikvah on the 7th day and you had your hair of shemesh and you just only took the haircut on the 8th day, then you can bring the karbanos on the 8th day. But what Hillel was talking about, the light tavel b'shvi, you didn't go to the mikvah on the 7th day. You only went to the mikvah on the 8th day, and then you took a haircut. Well, if you only went to the mikvah, you still didn't have sunset. That's why even Rabbi Akiva would agree to what Hillel is saying, because you didn't have sunset, because you went to the mikvah on the 8th day, you bring your karbanos on the 9th day. Okay, we finished Be'ez Hashem, Daf Mem Daled.